Hello and welcome to the RICS World Built Environment Forum webinar series. Today's webinar is in partnership with Glodon, and I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank ASITE, our lead tech partner. My name's Andrew Knight, and I head up the thought leadership for data and technology here at RICS. Today's webinar is in partnership, as I said, with Glodon, and we will be discussing the Intelligent Cities Challenge. And over the next hour, we'll be looking at a number of themes around what makes a city intelligent. How do we choose sustainable projects that best meet local needs? How technology companies are engaging with cities to help cities become more sustainable and inclusive. What are some of the similar initiatives to the ICC around the world? And when implementing projects under schemes such as the ICC, what are the key steps to success? And we'll be asking the question, are citizen-centric and city collaborative approaches essential to making cities more sustainable and livable? And finally, what can cities not involved in the ICC or similar initiatives learn from them? Now, we've got a great panel here today, and I'd like to introduce them one by one so they can give you a bit of a background on who they are and what they do. So without further ado, Dr. Sylvia Albert, could you give us a bit of an introduction from the University of Winnipeg for us?
Oh, thank you. I currently professor of strategy and leadership at the University of Winnipeg. I was the dean of the Faculty of Business and Economics. I had consulting firms that dealt with smart communities across Canada and special advisor to the federal government on their initiatives. I'm very pleased to be here today. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Sylvie. And Pier Paolo Franco, very glad to have you here from Glodon today. Could you give us some background for yourself, please, Pier Paolo?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Hi, my name is Pier Paolo Franco. I'm Vice President of Glodon, and my responsibility is the development of our international footprint. My responsibilities is over and defined strategy and operated the strategy for our internationalization process.
Thanks, Pier Paolo. And last but not least, Sirio Romeo, could you give us a bit of background on your involvement in the Derry London Dairy project?
Thank you, Andrea. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm coming from an Internet of Things background, so I'm looking at smart city from that point of view, but increasingly being involved in the last 7-8 years in non-technological aspects of smart city. Yes, I am a lead expert at Derry London Dairy, the ICC project EU funded, and I was also the same role for another previous project, which is kind of the father of the ICC, which was called Digital Cities Challenge for an Italian city. So yeah, I look after at Derry London Dairy along this 2 years project, and maybe we can discuss it more during this webinar. Thank you.
Indeed, thanks, Severio. Well, thanks all of you for joining again today. Now, I just wanted to highlight the fact that we have registrations from over 47 countries today, and we really welcome your active involvement as part of this webinar. So please do submit questions to our panel, as it really does help to bring the conversation to life. If you're new to these webinars, you should see that you can submit questions at any time using the question box on your screen. We'll pick up as many as we can as we go through the session, so please do at any point at the moment. I can see that question and answer box, and I can bring them up when it's relevant to, as I say, inject even more interest into this afternoon's conversations and question and answer. So without further ado, let's move on. And the first question I'd like to pose to our panel is, I guess, quite a fundamental one in terms of definitions. And perhaps I could start with you, Sylvie. What makes a city intelligent?
That's a very good question, and there hasn't been agreement on terminology, but I can tell you from my own observations, I would give you 3 descriptions. The first of the smart city concept, which I describe as the efficiency concept. And this is where we ask the question, how can we use data and technology to improve some decisions and efficiency? And in those projects, you see smart lights, smart meters, smart homes, all of those different types of smart something that is looking at fixing problems. And often some of these problems can be fixed by single organizations or partnerships of a few organizations into project. Now, I see all of this a bit on a continuum. It's an additive concept. So if we get to the next page where we talk about intelligence, here we're talking about effectiveness. So making nodes in a system work better. So how can we use technology to improve or increase innovation, citizen engagement, prepare our workforce, digital transformation, that kind of concept. And so we start to think about making parts of the system work better through networks and collaboration. And the last layer, which terms sustainability, this is where we start to think about system design. So possibly some re-engineering, more integration of how the systems work in a city or between cities. And, you know, this is a concept where we can't fix the parts only. So Dr. Russell Hakoff, you know, system design expert, talks about the system as a whole needs to be looked at to build resilience, not the parts individually. So collaboration isn't enough. We need everyone to be involved and take a piece. The whole of the environment is part of the system. So here, when we talk about system, the political system, economics, social, cultural, technological, legal, you have to, if parts of these systems don't work, you know, for example, you could have great technology, but, you know, very poor human rights, you know, you just don't have a sustainable city long-term if parts of that system doesn't work. So it's not just about the city, it's about the world and how one system affects another. So we've got to adopt more of that systems thinking at that level. So like I said, it's an additive system. So lots of times cities start, you know, with just doing some data projects, and then they look at building on that to really solve some challenges.
So do you feel there's still a challenge in people's understanding the difference between the intelligent city and the smart city? Because clearly there's a lot of rhetoric around smart cities, but clearly we're taking it to a higher level, if I can use that phrase. Do you think there's an easy way for people to sort of look at a city and see, yes, that's showing those characteristics of being intelligent now?
Right. So, you know, there's a lot of opportunities to learn about some of the differences and a lot of challenges that have been given to cities to think broader. So if we think of, for example, UN Sustainable Development Goals, they have a whole series of opportunities for cities to feature what they might want to change about themselves. So not just about fixing efficiency problems, but actually looking at how they make the city happier cities or better quality of life and, you know, better on the environment and all those kinds of things. And so it is a challenge because we typically have, I always say we've over professionalized ourselves. So everybody is a professional on something. And then we set aside, well, that's the responsibility of someone else. And we largely operate in silos. So the concept of resolving some real challenges needs to have more people coming to the table and putting it and adding, helping with the solutions.
Indeed, and you mentioned obviously all those different kind of dimensions of sustainability, and I suppose the key really is that then becomes a resilient city, to almost introduce another concept, that you're looking at that intelligence giving you the ability to react and effectively take on board changes and keep that resilience. Is that how you see intelligence delivering value in this way?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been fortunate enough to design the evaluation system for the intelligent cities in New York. It's a yearly international award where I've had the opportunity to see how cities interpret, you know, the concept of intelligence. And still, it's largely project-based and was largely project-based. And over time, we've seen cities start to think in terms of how that gets better integrated into the system. So, you know, for example, when we talk about, you know, increasing innovation throughout the community, you know, it's not just about how do we get more entrepreneurs and more funding for new ventures and more products and processes that are innovative, that our organizations integrate. But, you know, how does innovation fits into the concept of resilience and sustainability and that broader idea of how we make better cities. And so it's a long journey to move in that direction because they're really complex problems and you have to move beyond the silo ways of operating and engaging so many more people into the vision. And I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to talk about some of the Canadian projects later on that are really trying to see how they can adopt some of that broader perspective.
Indeed, indeed. I guess a final question from me on this section. Those dimensions there of economics, politics, socio-cultural, technology, legal, as you say, that they all intertwine and that they overlap. But is there one of those or a couple that stand out for you as being almost the biggest challenges, or is it almost more a challenge of just the integration of all those and bringing all those on at a similar speed and getting that kind of coordination between those issues?
Right. I'd say probably the latter because, up to now, when you look at what we measure efficiency, we measure technology, those kinds of things. We don't tend to do an awful lot in terms of measuring happiness. We're just starting to look at these kinds of concepts, how, people feel integrated within our cities and there's a lot of work to be done in understanding what it is that we're going to be measuring going forward.
Indeed, indeed. Well, thanks for the moment, Silvia. That's great. If I could move across to you, Saverio, how do cities choose sustainable projects that best meet their local needs? Well, what are your thoughts on that from your experiences?
Okay, so I'll give you a very look from someone who actually works with local authority. I mean, my role is really very hands-on with local authority and communities. And in 8 years of projects like that, I would say the first thing is to understand the context. Yeah, and the context of a city just kind of dictates certain political choices and therefore certain sustainable projects to develop. The other point I want to make that the word sustainability is very wide. Traditionally, we associate sustainability with the green policy, but as also Dr. Albert already highlighted, is more about a way of making the cities livable and addressing also problems like inequality within the cities, inequality of any type, like in Intelligent Cities Challenge. Really, we go away from tech to look at these problems, at the sustainability problems in more wide sense. So at the green issue, yes, but also, for example, in Derry, London Derry, we are focusing a lot on skilling. So upskilling, reskilling, because we have a huge problem of brain drain. We have problem of young people not really wanting to stay in Derry and live in the city, despite the city offers them potential opportunities for a creative and good life. So I think understanding the context is the first thing to do. So that understanding requires an assessment and an analysis of the city, which maybe in the case of New York is happening, but in my experiences, which are with small, medium-sized cities in Europe, sometimes there is no such a thing. So we ended up developing projects on a smart city mentality, like a smart parking. We do it just because it's cool, not because there is actual need for it. Yeah. The other point that I want to make strongly is that the discussion we are having needs to have a governance system, needs to have an entity within the local authority that looks at those projects and looks at those projects not like a one-off one, but in a life cycle sense. Sometimes I have experience in which you go in a town hall, yes, we do the smart lighting, and that's it. Like the smart lighting finish one day. The smart lighting doesn't finish one day. The smart lighting continues, gives you data, and you can build on it. And who understands that? There needs to be someone who manages that, who transform also that in political actions, and is not always present in the cities in which I'm working. So I would say context, governance, and data-driven policy making.
Great. And could I ask, and for the benefit of our listeners, what is the Intelligent Cities Challenge? You know, what are the themes? How is it actually being defined, so we can put a framework around that and understand really what the ask is?
Sure. Okay. As I said before, this ICC EU-funded project is built on a previous project done in the previous 2 years, which was called Digital Cities Challenge. And at the time, the objective was to use digital technologies as an enablement force to drive economic growth. It was really about digital transformation in cities, the concept of smart city and so on. With the ICC, the Commission wanted to expand the idea of an intelligent city towards the direction that Dr. Albert already highlighted, and again, focusing on small, medium-sized cities in Europe, and also cities with some specific issues, like could be economic growth or unemployment and so on. So basically, sort of training, cultural creation in these cities to transform themselves through ICC. And the ICC is basically designed around the recent policy, also the EU level, the EU resilience program, and it is divided in 5 thematic tracks. One is the green economy, the other one is citizen participation through digital technologies, the other one is supply chain and logistics, and then green tourism, and then upskilling and reskilling. Each city, so I think we are around 100 and more cities, so it's quite a big project, and there are not only European ones, there are quite a few, I think 12 cities from outside Europe, outside the EU. They decide to move along one of these thematic tracks. And within these thematic tracks, they decide to implement certain projects. And the support that the city receives is basically, let's say, knowledge support from a lead expert like me, for example. Each city has a lead expert. Each city has thematic experts on specific areas. And the project will end towards November 2022. And is very focused on implementation. We need to have 2-3 projects. We need to select 2-3 projects. We have already selected, and we will implement them through a framework that is provided by the Commission. I hope I clarified.
Yeah, that's great, Saverio. Well, one question specifically: how does it fit in with the European Green Deal? Is there a connection there, an explicit link?
Yes, so goes within the European Green Deal, because one of the main thematic track, one of the main stream of this project is the green economy, and the other stream is the green tourism. So let's say the project board has pushed a lot towards this along those lines. So a lot of cities are working on green activities. And if you are a citizen in an EU member state, you can obviously address now all the projects on the Green Deal and on the next horizon, on the next research program that's are focused on sustainability. So it's been shaped around the EU Green Deal policy.
Great, thank you. And can you give us some examples of some of the projects that are actually being implemented after they've been selected by the EU? What sort of things are going on?
Okay, so this is a bit difficult because we are in the first year of the project, and we spend the first year to identify which projects to do.
Okay.
In the case of Derry Londonderry, the focus we have is not on the green side, but is on upskilling and reskilling workforce for Industry 4.0 technologies. This is because Derry Londonderry presents quite an interesting landscape, private landscape in Industry 4.0, and there is need for upskill existing workforce, but also for forming a new workforce in technologies like artificial intelligence or digital twins and so on. So this is one of the initiatives we are going to do. Another initiative we are going to do is to address through some sort of training activities at the secondary school level, the gender diversity in technology. We have clearly an issue in Derry Londonderry about let's say a bit of a traditional way of seeing with the work. The man does engineering and the woman does something else. We are working towards with secondary school to create the appetite and also help girls to develop skills in the tech side. We are going to do that through workshop in schools, also apprenticeships in the program into companies. And then there are in other cities there are a lot of projects on the green around renewable energy. And one that I know about it is about the monitoring of renewable systems, remote monitoring of renewable systems in southern Italian city. And again, the idea there is to use technology primarily, so the IoT, to monitor the systems and to basically enable the efficiency, as Dr. Halbert says, of the energy production through solar in this town. But there are many projects on the green side. I think almost 40% of these cities involved into the ICC are looking into the green side of it. I mean, Derry decides to focus on the skills for a specific reason of promoting digital technology among young people primarily, and try to convince them that they can, they can do a cool job in Derry. They don't need to go to London or to Dublin. So, and this is the brain drain is a big problem in this for many cities in this ICC project.
No, I understand. Thanks. I guess one last question for you. Clearly, COVID-19 has changed many things, whether temporarily or permanently, in terms of how we use cities. I know I haven't used my home city of London very much in the last 18 months. Has the effect of COVID-19 changed the direction or emphasis of any of the projects?
Yes, because again, in the case of Derry, so the COVID-19 has really affected badly the business system. And therefore, also one of the reasons to put emphasis on the upskilling and reskilling in advanced tech is to try to give an opportunity to restart to certain businesses in Derry. Similarly can be seen in the other cities in the ICC. From a methodological point of view, if we go back a bit at the idea that you need to understand the context, has been quite challenging because all the activities has been done online. For example, I live in London too, but in theory had to go to Derry to meet people, to have discussion, to have the workshops, and everything has been done online. Has definitely slowed down the process and has changed also the initial trajectory of cities. For example, a lot has been put in around tourism. Because quite few cities, particularly in the Mediterranean side of Europe, were, as all know, were affected by the COVID-19, and they've diverted their focus on the tourism side. Try to understand also how digital tech, for example, can help the tourism in the cities and so on. So. Definitely has been an interesting year for the projects, and we have changed quite a few plans.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for the moment. Before I move on to you, Pier Paolo, please do, everybody who's listening, do put some questions in the chat box if you want anything to raise with the panel. So Pier Paolo, moving to you now. Clearly, technology is key in many areas. How are technology companies engaging with cities to help make cities more sustainable and inclusive?
Thank you, Andrew. Well, probably worth to say that I'm I'm speaking on behalf of the private sector and on behalf of my company, who is a Chinese company. I'm sitting in Beijing at the moment. I'm speaking from Beijing, and we are a whole life cycle digital solution platform provider. China is quite advanced in these fields, and as far as the city challenges is concerned and how to digitalize cities, we interact with the government, in one word, because the driving agent of the digitalization is the government. And as a consequence, then we interact with all the actors that are involved in the life cycle. Worth to say that, in my opinion, we are looking for developing high starting point as far as the planning is concerned, high standard construction, and therefore a fine governance. This is becoming the new trend in the urban construction and development. There are still disjunction and silos activities as far as the urban planning, the construction, and the operation and management is concerned. What we see as the present rather than the future is the realization of a digital twin city model. We have in operation a number of CIM. So what is the development, further development of BIM into a city? So a city information modeling that offer a complete and all life cycle platform that puts together everything that we have at disposal. So 5G, blockchain, big data, artificial intelligence, BIM as a core engine, and deliver a new blueprint that integrate planning, integrate construction, and integrates operation and management. To do this, I believe that the central actor is still to be the government, because data in the majority of cases that are ongoing and actively exchanged from drawings, the platform, the clouds, and are exchanged and given at the disposal of the platform itself to be managed, depending on which phase we are talking about, comes from the government itself, first of all, and then the other actors that are involved in this chain. That's to me the future, and in this part of the world is the present. So the delivery of an integrated platform that put together at disposal of the city urban planning, construction management, and operation, achieving a digital city and offering a digital model of the city that through which you can make a simulation management through a cockpit, have emergency command in case of things to be at large saying that can happen, and make intelligent decision is the key. I don't see this how can be achieved if we as digital providers are not engaging government in premise.
Indeed, and is it sort of two-way traffic, Pier Paolo? Are you seeing a sort of a positive environment where technology firms are reaching out to cities and governments, and indeed cities and governments are proactively reaching out to understand what technology they can use?
Well, I think there are different levels of interaction depending on which geography we are talking about. Here in China, we have operation in 70 different countries, and probably we see 70 different type of approach. China, as far as I'm concerned, from my experience, is really the most advanced, where is the government itself that has put as policy and has a significant number of projects that has started, if I'm not mistaken, more than 5 years ago, to realize digital twin models of part of the cities or areas of cities that are subjected to these pilots experience. In other context, region, the government demand this approach to developers and other stakeholders like construction companies, and we approach them, or we are approached with them, because their digitalization project means them delivering a digital building, for example, in that case. So, but I would say that what I've been experiencing here is very much advanced, and the government is the central actor.
Indeed, and as you say, it's clearly going to vary by jurisdiction in terms of whether it's at city level or government level, and as you say, it's going to be a different picture around the world. Thanks for that, Pierpaolo. If I could move on to you, Sylvia, if I may, what are some of the similar initiatives to the Intelligent Cities Challenge around the world that you see from outside of Europe?
Yes, so interestingly enough, when I started my doctoral dissertation on this topic more than 25 years ago, dating myself a little bit here, we had a handful of projects around the world, and now, as Pierpaolo explained, hundreds in China, in India, Severio talked about over 136 projects, I think, in Europe, and of course, throughout North America, North and South America, we see so many more projects. Lots of interest in rethinking cities and sustainability, and under a lot of different but similar headings. Terminology gets a little bit mixed up, I think, over all of these projects. Smart city, smart community benchmarking and challenges, sometimes with government funding, sometimes they are just recognition awards, such as the Intelligent Community Award, and challenges, fabrication city that are look at circular economy concept, making cities livable awards, climate action awards. We even have widgets available on the UN website, B1G1 Business for Good, that attempt to record the achievements of businesses in achieving sustainable development goals. So there's a lot of initiatives out there. And I think because the language is a bit confusing, we see a lot of cities and organizations that are running programs where the concepts span smart, intelligent, and sustainable. And I think we see that in the Canadian Smart Cities Challenge as an example. So the government wanted the cities to come forward. Even the term city is under scrutiny these days, because there's a lot of places that define themselves as community versus city. And what the government wanted is small, medium, large communities and cities to think about some of the things that were important to them and that they wanted to solve, but they wanted to have that flavor of using digital technologies and data to help solve some of those problems, as well as having a good amount of collaboration, so stakeholders coming to the table. So the first part was to get the cities to talk with stakeholders about what was important to them and pick some themes that of projects that they might undertake. And I'll just talk about some of the winners for a moment. Montreal one, I'm sorry, did you want to ask a question, Andrew?
No, I just said thanks. Yeah, tell us about Montreal and some other examples, please.
Yes, okay, good. So Montreal received $50 million from the Canadian government, and their main theme was mobility and access to food. So they had 36 projects under that theme. So everything that spanned in terms of sustainable mobility, from car and bike sharing on demand to autonomous vehicles and so forth. Nunavut in the north of Canada won $10 million. Their challenge was suicide prevention. So very interesting how different the projects are, and really based on the challenges that the communities were facing. So they were looking at a lot of projects on digital health and some wellness platforms and strategies. Guelph in Ontario, Canada, $10 million winner as well on food security. So their main objectives, I believe, was they wanted to eliminate hunger. So they're looking at circular food economy concepts and making food ecosystems more secure, affordable, and nutritious. And in all of these projects, of course, they're using quite a bit of digital technologies and data to help them manage everything that they're trying to do. The last one, Bridgewater, Nova Scotia, $5 million winner, very small community looking at reducing energy poverty. So they're retrofitting, monitoring transport systems, redesign, clean tech, will all go into making energy more affordable for its residents. So as you can see, there's a lot of similarities to what's happening in the European ICC. But it does span the concept of smart, using technology to be more efficient, to sustainability, where you're looking at really making some significant improvement into the livability and the future sustainability of the city. So that's the Canadian example. As I said, there are so many other benchmarks and challenges. The US Smart Cities example was focused around smart transportation systems, and Columbus, Ohio won the challenge. And even though they were talking about sustainable transportation, if you look at the Ohio project, they were talking about better access to jobs, some smart logistics, connecting residents and visitors, and of course, sustainable transportation option, because that was the theme of the challenge. It's very interesting what's happening worldwide. And there's so many organizations that are involved in helping cities understand and benchmark themselves. To take another example, TÜBingen University in Vienna, they launched a European Smart Cities benchmarking system where they have hundreds of communities that use indicators to self-assess where they are, and then they're able to look at making decisions to make some improvements. So it's quite interesting, the variety of initiatives when you look at some of these awards and challenges, what's coming out of them, and how we can learn from one another.
It's great that you mentioned those sort of benchmarking initiatives, and you almost took the words out of my mouth. Do we have enough forums and ability to learn from all these various projects? Because there must be an awful lot of rich experience coming out of these, and I wonder, are we doing the best job we can as a set of stakeholders in making sure we share all those learnings? Right.
I mean, information overload is a little bit of a problem, I think. And, there are a lot of cities that really will make the effort to seek out information. They might develop sister city initiatives. I know that the Intelligent Community Forum, they really encourage the networking between the cities that apply to become recognized as intelligent cities. And so, there is an opportunity to learn that way. But if you're in a community that is not really thinking about those issues and not seeking best practices and to learn more, then of course that's not being propagated, and it's a shame, because really what we need is as many of our cities worldwide working on some of these challenges.
And indeed, another point on benchmarking. I mean, there's obviously a lot of public critique of the different versions of ESG type scorecards and metrics, applied at the moment. Is there a similar issue you think in this kind of area where there are various benchmarks but no real kind of degree of standardization and calibration to make sure that these benchmarks are meaningful and can work across cities and regions and jurisdictions?
Right. So there are some themes that cross cities for sure. And, there's enough indicators out there that people can find what is most useful to them. So there are some areas where we can benchmark, and there's some areas that are really local issues that need to be dealt with differently. And so I think that it's pretty obvious if you look at the European Intelligent Cities Challenge or the Canadian Smart Cities Challenge, that the government is recognizing that cities have different issues that they want to work on, and they're giving them the flexibility to look at those issues. And similarly, in doing all of that monitoring and evaluation, there's so many indicators that cities can pick and choose and design their own system of measurement based on the visions that they have for their own community.
That's great. Thanks, Sylvie. I move on, if I may, to Saverio. But just before then, please do put any questions in the chat box if you've got any questions for the panel. But Saverio, I guess here's a great question. When we're implementing projects under schemes such as the ICC or those kind of things that Sylvie's been talking about, what are the key steps to success? What's the recipe? What's the recipe? I think we may have lost Saverio. So what I'll do, if I may, is probably work on to the next question. So Sylvie, I think back to you. Are you still there, Sylvie?
Yes, I am.
Technical issues, yeah. Technical gremlins here. We obviously need an intelligent internet and intelligent platform. So apologies for the delay there. Hopefully that we can get Saverio back. So moving on with you, Sylvie. Are citizen-centric and city collaborative approaches essential to making cities more sustainable and livable?
Definitely, especially if cities want to move around that continuum from smart to sustainable. Sustainability needs a lot of hands. It is complex. All stakeholders need to be engaged in the solutions, working collaboratively, sharing resources, sharing that vision, individually contributing a small piece that create that synergy that's going to make a difference. So, I mean, any project that you think about in terms of, becoming more livable, let's say in a quick case of Guelph, you wanted to eliminate hunger, there's a lot of organizations in the community that are already working on food security. We can talk about everything from engaging farmers to nonprofit and volunteer organizations to governments to students, universities, to people donating their time. There's so many different hands that can come in and help make sure that vision becomes a reality. So, it is, to your question, the concept of engaging people becomes extremely important. So, I mean, I think that the next question is that, how do we motivate, how do we measure how many people are really involved in making some of these projects a reality or some of these visions a reality? So right now, there's a lot of interesting things that are happening from private sector, from nonprofit organizations, platforms on mobile devices, for example, that can help us collect data on what individual citizens are doing. For example, I could be, donating some food. I can register my donation online. And then, perhaps the city offers some kind of incentives for people to be really engaged with donating food, as an example, and are able to make decisions when they see that things aren't working well and, communicating better and trying to engage more of their population into helping them achieve their vision. So, these kinds of platforms, AI devices, that are able now to collect data directly from organizations and allow us to really understand on who's doing what in the community. There's on the reverse side also collecting data on business for good or business that are not doing what they should be doing, so consumers can make a choice on who they support. It's really exciting to see the development. It's scary at the same time, but there are real opportunities to engage and understanding who's doing what in your community.
Indeed. I'm interested to explore a theme you kind of touched on slightly earlier in a previous question around different sized communities, and interested about, because clearly there are many instances, I think particularly in the US, of cities competing with each other to attract investors, obviously around the kind of livability and quality of the city, but also the kind of disparities. Obviously we see that in many jurisdictions. Obviously in the UK there's the rhetoric of levelling up, but how these kind of initiatives can kind of perhaps help that balance between competitiveness and cooperation, and also perhaps the sort of the levelling up where you have, particularly where we have in the UK, a big disparity between London and the other regional cities. What are you seeing there? Are you seeing some positive outcomes, both in terms of that competitiveness balance and indeed that levelling up, if I can use that phrase, between different sized communities?
Right. I think that the concept of collaboration is gaining a lot of strength. Like, we can achieve much more in working collaboratively than in competition. There is no doubt that we'll continue to compete as cities. I mean, this is the way that we've always operated. But when we move further into digitalization and globalization, we are increasingly interconnected, and this requires collaboration. And we've also lived through a lot of periods where we've had to look for collaboration. Like, if we look at the example of the pandemic, so many cities had to help each other with healthcare workers, to help with, the increasing number of cases in some communities over another. We see that in fighting fires. There's so many things that happen in communities where we end up seeking the help of others and collaborating in one way. And once people start to collaborate, then they start to think in terms of, how can we make our systems better? And maybe they don't need to be at the city level, and they can cross city boundaries, and we can become more efficient when we're working together. So, but in terms of leveling the playing field, I think that's a lot more difficult, because larger cities, we cannot deny, have an appeal. They have a broad appeal. They have a lot more infrastructure.
No, I don't know how it is.
There are a lot of attractions in terms of careers and jobs and so forth. And, we've had a little bit of a door opening for smaller to medium-sized cities who perhaps attract more of a niche market, if I can use that as strategic terms. So people that are more interested in, for example, better real estate prices and so forth. And so when companies said, well, people can work from wherever, there's an opportunity for those niche residents who previously perhaps were in larger cities to move where they wanted to move. And as long as that door is open, it gives better opportunities for those cities to exercise, the smaller and the medium-sized one, to exercise their core competence in attracting those residents. But when the real estate prices start to increase and the companies get their workers to come back on site, the door starts to close again. And so it is, I'm not sure that it levels the playing field. Certainly, if you don't have digital infrastructure, you're having a hard time competing in this world. But it's not a leveling, but it can help a little bit.
Indeed, thanks. Pierpaolo, could I move on to you, if I may? Obviously, there are many cities that aren't involved in the ICC or indeed similar initiatives that Sylvie's talked about. What can these other cities learn from this? We've talked about some of the sharing of information, some of the benchmarks. What do you think cities can learn when they're not actually involved in these projects, but they clearly want to start down this journey?
Well, in my opinion, it's a matter of going through a digitalization process where. Hello.
I think that might be Severo trying to join us. Do carry on, Pier Paolo.
Can I carry on? Yeah. Yes, I was saying it's a matter of going through a gradual and progressive digitalization process, depending on the volume of this initiative. Of course, Saverio before was mentioning small initiative like a car park that had become intelligent, or a piece of infrastructure that become intelligent. I believe that need to understand that there is a need of ongoing sharing data, a need of integration between processes, as I mentioned before, from a planning perspective up to operation perspective. Other cities, people and governance think about from small to go bigger, and definitely I believe that to make their cities livable, more sustainable, and more inclusive, having the support of a digital model pose no limits, because we can see all the technology in use put at disposal of the city itself, Internet of Things through sensor, collecting and transferring real data, real-time data on, for example, energy consumption, data, air quality, pollution type of things, water quality, soil, plant, etc. over the network, create an ecosystem and a management of an ecosystem that can give tools to who is managing the city, and then therefore the citizens that are at the center of this to benefit from a better living environment in one word. So a better management of a city looks from an ecosystem perspective, looked after as an ecosystem perspective, allowed the built environment to become the cornerstone for the development of future cities and for citizens. Governance, citizens, and as a whole, the decision maker making the right use of the right technology could help a city becomes more intelligent or smart, as we want to define, in which way we wanted to define the city. But at the basic, there is a collaborative culture that should be used to ensure sustainable and inclusive design, development, and operational management of the cities. So we can build cities where our kids will grow in a nice and healthy environment.
Thanks, Pier Paolo. I just going to, Severo, do we have you back just before we begin to move to close here? Are you being able to actually connect again, Severo? I'm going to assume that Severo has bumped into some technical problems. What I might do, if I may, Sylvie, rather cheekily, is maybe pose the question I was going to ask Severo about when you're implementing projects under schemes like the ICC, what are your view in terms of those key steps to success?
Well, I mean, in any strategy, the first piece is the vision, and you need that vision to be shared if you want to have, people coming on board and helping you realize it. There's no single organization these days that is able to do everything on their own. And so in the past, we've talked a lot about, building partnerships and collaborations. I think that's a piece of it. But, how you get the maximum number of stakeholders in the community involved should really be the goal. And there's a lot of interesting ways of doing that. I mean, obviously, there's the visionary leader approach where, you really engage people through the idea that, we're doing some great things together, and that's a piece of it. I think it was, I'm not sure if it was Pier Paolo or Saverio that talked about the governance piece. I think it was Saverio, where, there's opportunities to look at distributed governance. So, you have like a series of nodes across the community that are working on different pieces of projects. So you're allowing people to contribute and make some decisions on where they will bring a piece of the vision to help build the whole. So, there's these early steps in terms of, developing that vision, developing the teams that will work on it, developing some metrics in terms of what you're going to measure when. I think these are important first pieces.
Great, thank you. Well, it's been a fascinating hour, and apologies that we didn't get all the comments we wanted to get from Saverio, but across all three of you, I'd like to thank all of you on the panel for your time and your expertise and your experience. So thanks very, very much for that. Thanks, Glodon, for partnering us with on this particular webinar. Just to remind you all that we will publish a recording and a written summary of this webinar, as well as the presentation itself. And please do feel free to share all these with your professional networks. If you would like to take a few moments to let us know what you thought of today's session, by completing the online poll, which will appear on your screens at the end of the webinar, we'd be really, really grateful. Please do join us for any of our future webinars. Our next webinar takes place next month, and that's going to explore sidewalk labs and the Toronto waterfront. And you can also watch all our previous webinars that you may have missed by going to our website. Dubai 2022, our World Built Environment Forum Global Summit will be visiting Dubai as part of Expo 2020 in Dubai in January 2022. The program is going to focus on the livable city, agile, healthy and resilient, and you can book your ticket today at the super early bird rate. So please do visit the website rics.org /WebF, WBEF to book and for further details on the program. So once again, thanks to A-Site, the World Built Environment Forum lead tech partner. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn, where you can receive news of upcoming webinars as well as recently published articles. And finally, you can download the WebF app from both the App Store or Google Play, where you can access all the latest innovative global thought leadership content across the built environment. So thanks again. Until next time, goodbye and enjoy the rest of your day.